Grandpa's electric fence. The HOA president tried to climb it and got zapped into a cactus garden. You ever see a grown woman launch backward off a fence like a cartoon coyote, arms flailing, clipboard spinning into a cactus garden? No. Well, that was my Tuesday morning, and it all started because Patrice Thorne just had to touch Grandpa's fence. That's what I told the deputy anyway. The real truth? It started 2 weeks earlier when I moved in with Grandpa Roy after college, thinking I'd save on rent and help out on the old ranch. I didn't know I was stepping into a full-scale suburban war zone, complete with property disputes, HOA madness, and one electrified boundary line that would soon become the most infamous fence in the county. But watching Patrice's perfectly coiffed hair lift like a balloon that morning, I realized I wasn't in suburbia anymore. I was in Grandpa's world now, and there were rules here that didn't get printed in any HOA handbook. When I first arrived, I figured living with Grandpa Roy would be quiet. The man's a decorated veteran turned farmer who wears the same denim overalls every day and keeps a .22 in his sock drawer just in case. His idea of excitement was the occasional raccoon breaking into the chicken feed. I was wrong. I hadn't even unpacked when Grandpa nodded toward the field and said, "We've got a problem." The HOA sent a new one. He didn't even have to say her name. We both saw her marching up in beige slacks, arms crossed, staring at the property like she was waiting to ticket someone for breathing too loud. That was Patrice. Full name Patrice Thorne, president of the Willow Creek Trails Association and self-appointed warden of grass length, fence height, and all that is unholy in rural freedom. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She just stood at the edge of the property, staring at Grandpa's 40-year-old cedar post fence like it had personally offended her. "This structure appears to exceed the legal association height restriction," she announced, not even bothering to introduce herself. Grandpa stayed seated on the porch swing, chewing on a toothpick. "Good thing I'm not part of your association then," he drawled back. She squinted at him, then pulled out a clipboard like it was a tactical weapon. "This land falls under subdivision jurisdiction, sir. It was recently annexed into Phase 3 as per updated lot mapping." Grandpa stood up slow, like an old grizzly bear that just realized it's being poked with a sharp stick. "I bought this property directly from Wayne Thorne 3 years ago. We're outside your petty lines, and I've got the deed to prove it." She didn't flinch. "Wayne Thorne is my ex-husband, and he never had proper authority to exempt this lot. I'll be back." And she was. The next day, then the day after. She took pictures from her SUV. She walked the perimeter. Once, she even pretended to drop a flyer under the gate and lingered for a suspiciously long time. Grandpa didn't say much. He just watched from the porch with Buster, his old hound, at his feet and a notepad on his lap. But I could tell he was getting ready. This wasn't his first turf war. He started measuring fence posts, checking gate locks, and rummaging through old wires and spools in the barn. "Mason," he said one night, his eyes distant, "when folks keep testing boundaries, sometimes you got to make 'em respect 'em." I nodded, not quite sure if he meant philosophically or literally. The answer came the next morning when I saw him rigging copper wire across the top of the fence and hooking it to a deep cycle car battery. "It wasn't lethal," Grandpa assured me, adjusting the gauge. "Enough to teach a lesson, not enough to fry a squirrel." Still, it felt like overkill. "Aren't you worried she'll call the deputy?" I asked. He chuckled. "She already did. Deputy Cole came by last week, looked around, sipped his coffee, and told me to keep the peace." Then he winked and asked for eggs. Apparently, Grandpa had his own private diplomacy system with the local law. That night, Patrice's SUV crawled past again. The headlights paused near the eastern fence, the one Grandpa had just rigged. I watched from my upstairs window, heart thumping. Patrice stepped out with a flashlight, looking around cautiously. She wore gloves and had a tape measure hanging from her belt like a sword. She moved toward the fence slowly, like she was sneaking into a tomb. "Grandpa, she's doing it," I whispered. He was already there on the porch, rocking slowly, thermos in hand. "Wait for it," he muttered. Then it happened. She reached up, grabbing the top of the fence with one hand while trying to hoist herself up with the other. The moment her second hand made contact with the copper warning line, her body jolted violently. There was a high-pitched yelp, then a loud crack as she flew backward into a barrel cactus we planted years ago to keep deer away. Her flashlight skittered across the gravel, and her clipboard flew so high I swear it touched the moon before slapping back down. I wanted to laugh, but I was frozen. She lay there groaning, legs twitching, cactus needles sticking out of her arm like nature's own voodoo revenge. Grandpa just sipped his thermos. Told her, he said. She just don't listen. The next morning, Patrice posted furiously to the association Facebook group, calling Grandpa a dangerous radical and accusing him of booby-trapping shared HOA fencing. Half the neighborhood commented with laughing emojis. The other half, the quiet folks, asked for tips on how to build a fence like that. Sheriff Cole came by just as Grandpa and I were fixing a busted gate latch. He walked over slowly, tipping his hat. Heard Patrice took flight, he said. Fence jump. Grandpa nodded. Might have brushed the wrong wire. The deputy smirked. That fence of yours, shockproof? Shock-resistant, Grandpa clarified. Legal. Only if you're not touching it. Cole sipped his coffee again and shrugged. Well, I didn't see anything. As long as she stays on her side of the line, we've got no problem. Then he gave Grandpa a grin and walked off. I realized then that this wasn't just about one fence or one nosy HOA officer. This was about principle. Grandpa believed in property lines, hard-earned land, and a man's right to defend it. Patrice, on the other hand, believed in authority, control, and measuring grass blades. And somehow these two were going to keep colliding like opposing storm fronts until someone got washed away. The morning after Patrice's fence-flinging fiasco, the whole town was buzzing. By mid-morning, half a dozen neighbors had stopped by, some bringing baked goods just to get a closer look at the now-famous fence. Grandpa, as usual, was unbothered, but I could tell he knew this wouldn't be the end. He knew Patrice would make this about something bigger than a shock and a cactus tumble. Sure enough, by lunchtime, Patrice had taken the fight public. A brand new post on the association Facebook group featured a photo of her bandaged hand, dramatic lighting, and a furious caption. I was the victim of a targeted electrical attack by a resident refusing to comply with community ordinances. It was clear she didn't just want justice, she wanted war. Grandpa read the post while eating his sandwich. Ain't it funny, he said, how folks who cry danger always seem to be the ones holding the wire cutters. The very next day, a folded letter appeared in our mailbox, marked urgent community violation notice. Karen had written it herself, citing 3 infractions: illegal fencing structure, unauthorized electrical modifications, and noncompliance with visual harmony standards. Grandpa read it aloud, chuckled, then handed it to me. Frame that for the outhouse. The funny part was, Patrice didn't even have the authority to issue such a notice. But that hadn't stopped her from printing her own map, scribbling in boundary lines with a red marker, and posting it online as evidence. She just called the county records office a liar, Grandpa muttered. That afternoon, Grandpa decided it was time to reinforce the facts. We marched down to the sheriff's office where we requested an official statement of jurisdiction on the land. Deputy Cole looked over the paperwork and confirmed, "You boys are fine." Patrice has got a history of trying to stretch boundaries, both literal and legal. He turned serious. Don't give her a reason, though. If she presses hard enough, she might get a code inspector out here. Let's not give them a show. On the way home, Grandpa got quiet. I knew that look. He wasn't worried. He was planning. By evening, he was in the barn pulling out an old trail cam, tools, and a can of camouflage paint. Time to start gathering our own evidence, he said. Let her try again. We'll have ourselves a home video masterpiece. We didn't have to wait long. At 3:14 a.m., one of the sensors tripped. There she was, clear as day in the infrared glow, crouched near the fence with what looked like a measuring tape and a legal pad. She was smarter now, cautious, avoiding the copper line. She paced the fence, taking pictures from different angles. By morning, the footage was saved in 3 places. Redundancy, Grandpa said. It's what wins wars. Later that morning, Patrice posted a screenshot of herself, claiming she'd documented 6 code violations and warning that the deputy would soon be involved. 5 minutes later, Grandpa uploaded a 30-second clip from the trail cam showing her creeping along the fence like a raccoon in yoga pants. The caption just said, "Count ya." It exploded. Neighbors who had stayed quiet before now started openly mocking her. Someone edited the footage to the theme from Mission Impossible. Patrice went silent for the rest of the day, but silence from Patrice never meant surrender. The next morning, sure enough, we found a small drone hovering over the backyard chicken coop. It buzzed around like a mechanical mosquito. Grandpa grabbed his potato gun, loaded it with a spud, and took aim. The drone dropped like a rock. "Freedom," he said, slinging the gun over his shoulder. Things were only getting started. 2 days later, a glossy envelope arrived detailing a special emergency session to review the annexation of non-compliant parcels into the association. Patrice was trying to rewrite the map again, this time with votes. She was trying to gerrymander me out of my own land. The vote was scheduled for the upcoming Saturday morning, padded with absentee ballots. We needed help. That's when Wayne Thorne showed up again, unannounced, chewing gum and leaning against his rusted Ford with a smirk. "Heard Patrice is trying to reinstate the Royal Fence Wars," he said. Wayne revealed he'd kept copies of the original exemption forms from when he sold the land to Grandpa, just in case Patrice ever pulled something like this. "She wanted to keep this patch for herself," he explained. "I sold it out of pure pettiness." Grandpa flipped through the manila envelope. "This will do." Still, documents wouldn't stop the association if Patrice got enough people to rubber stamp her annexation plan. That's when Grandpa hatched the idea. Crash the HOA meeting, not just with evidence, but with backup. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Grandpa made calls to every neighbor he trusted. Turns out Patrice had built quite a record of selective enforcement, harassing folks over flower colors, flag placement, even one guy's solar panels. A quiet rebellion had been brewing for months. Grandpa became their reluctant general. Saturday arrived with the kind of tension you could taste. We arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. Grandpa in his Sunday boots, Wayne tagging along with a mug that said, "World's #1 ex-husband," and me with a folder of every document we'd collected. Patrice's smile cracked the moment she saw us. "This meeting is for association members only," she said into the mic. Grandpa raised a hand. "Then I reckon you'd best stop voting on land that ain't yours." Grandpa walked straight to the podium, past the shocked board members, and dropped Wayne's envelope on the table. "Here's the deed, the exemption, the county plat, and a letter from your ex-husband confirming the sale. You want to talk jurisdiction? Let's talk facts." Patrice sputtered. Then I stepped forward with a portable speaker and played the audio we'd recorded from her 3 a.m. fence inspection. Her voice muttering measurements echoed through the tent. "Is that the creepy night video lady?" someone whispered. Patrice tried to regain control, but at that moment, the drone footage came on. Grandpa had queued it up on a nearby monitor with help from our neighbor, Craig. The screen showed her drone peeking into chicken coops and hovering outside windows. Someone yelled, "That's invasion of privacy." Another voice shouted, "Call the deputy." Just when things started spiraling, Deputy Cole himself arrived. He strolled up, tipped his hat to Grandpa, and asked, "Someone want to tell me why there's a military surveillance drone in a residential neighborhood?" Cole looked at the crowd. "Anybody here think this land should be forced into an association against a legal deed?" Not a single hand went up. Patrice stood alone, her clipboard trembling. Cole turned to Grandpa. "You present charges?" Grandpa looked around, then shook his head. "Nah, she's embarrassed enough. That's worth more than a fine." The meeting quietly dispersed. Neighbors came over, patting Grandpa on the back, thanking him for standing up. "Don't fence with Roy." Someone offered to make t-shirts. Grandpa just chuckled. "She'll be back," he said. "People like that don't quit. They just change tactics." The following week passed with an eerie calm. Grandpa didn't trust it. "It's like the still air before a tornado," he muttered, hammering in a fresh sign, "Private property. Trespassers will be zapped." He said we needed to host a 4th of July bash, not just a celebration, but bait. "Let's give her a show so we can catch her next act." Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 4th, just as the brisket was being pulled off the smoker, I caught a flicker of movement on the eastern side of the property. Patrice and 2 of her disciples, dressed in what looked like tactical beige, were creeping along the fence line with clipboards and a measuring wheel. It was like watching raccoons in pearls trying to crack a safe. Grandpa flipped open the weatherproof box near the gate. Inside was a pressure-sensitive switch wired to a motion-activated camera and a speaker. "We got a little surprise this time," he whispered. The moment Patrice stepped through the narrow gap in the gate, the speaker kicked on with full-volume banjo music and a recording of Grandpa's voice hollering, "Smile. You're on candid property." Patrice screamed. One partner tripped backward into the bushes, and the other one ran. Patrice spun around, caught her foot on the gate, and landed hard in a pile of decorative gnomes we just arranged near the path. The entire scene was captured from 3 angles and relayed to Craig's tablet. The crowd erupted in laughter. "She landed right on the gnome's hat," someone yelled. Patrice quickly posted an official-sounding letter calling our barbecue an unauthorized gathering and citing gross violations of public safety. Grandpa read the post out loud, laughed so hard he almost choked on a rib bone, and declared it his favorite piece of fiction since he last read a grocery receipt. 2 nights later, she returned under cover of darkness, wearing all black, carrying what looked like a measuring laser and a tiny tripod. She was trying to build a legal case now. That's when Grandpa decided it was time to get serious. He pulled out a dusty box labeled Stan's files and found old email printouts between Patrice and Wayne. One email mentioned a Phase 4 expansion plan for future association development that would include all adjacent land with potential community asset value. This wasn't about fences. It was about revenge, greed, and turning Grandpa's ranch into her personal landscaping project. We made copies and sent them to Deputy Cole with a short note. "Thought you'd like to see where this rabbit hole leads." Cole called us in for a chat. "Looks like this wasn't just neighborhood drama," he said. "This might be criminal fraud." The next night proved Grandpa right. Around midnight, the motion sensors near the barn pinged. There she was, bolt cutters in one hand, trying to get into the electrical box. She didn't realize Grandpa had installed a secondary system, a decoy wire designed to trigger a silent alarm. By the time she popped the box open, we were already standing on the porch watching. "Let her finish," Grandpa said. "This time I want the whole town to see." The next morning, Grandpa posted the video of Patrice breaking in, cutting wires, and then trying to slip a fake lien into our mailbox. The video spread like wildfire. 2 days later, a special association meeting was called, but Patrice wasn't invited. The board, pressured by public outcry and a looming legal case, voted unanimously to remove her from all positions of authority. Even her former allies turned their backs. Grandpa didn't celebrate. He just went about his day like always. But there was something different in his stride, an ease I hadn't seen in weeks. "She'll either move or stew," he finally said. "But either way, she's done here." I asked him why he didn't want to press charges. He looked out toward the hills where the fence caught the last golden sliver of light. "Sometimes justice ain't a courtroom, Mason. Sometimes it's a community finally waking up. Besides, I got what I wanted. My fence is still standing, and no one's trying to climb it now." The final days of summer rolled in like a soft exhale. A for sale sign went up just after Labor Day, half buried in the flower bed Patrice used to trim with surgical precision. The neighborhood, for the first time in a long while, exhaled. The story passed along at bonfires and over coffee. The woman who tried to climb a fence and got more than a jolt. Because sometimes the best kind of revenge isn't loud. It isn't cruel. It's quiet, patient, and permanent. It's a fence that holds. And a man who never needed permission to defend what was his. Now, I want to hear from you. What was Patrice's single biggest mistake? The public humiliation, or the moment she tried to annex the property through a false map? And do you think Grandpa Roy should have pressed criminal charges? Or was the public shaming enough justice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.